G'day YouTube, it's Shane here once again, and you are watching Benefit of Doubt. This is a show channel that's dedicated to skepticism, rational thinking, and applying the benefit of doubt to your everyday life and your time online. A good bit of skepticism goes a long, long way, especially with all the nonsense here on YouTube and Facebook and other social media platforms. Today's show is going to be about my origins and how I came to skepticism so late in my life. This channel, I don't really want to push atheism so much. I think that people can find their own way a little bit. Now, I took the long way around, and I think that it's easy to want to shortcut the process and say, look, this is illogical to believe certain things and this and that, and where's the evidence and whatnot. I've had skeptics in my life, and they were doing the right things. They were saying, look, this is illogical. How can you believe this? How can you believe that? Rah, rah. But because of the religious conditioning and the stuff that I believed in, the shields come up, and it becomes what you perceive as an attack on your ego. Makes you more defensive, makes you not want to listen. Your shields come up. And so what I want to do with this channel is just to, you can have a discussion here. You can agree to, or disagree, or agree to disagree, or whatever. The idea is to encourage people to actually sow the seeds of doubt and to encourage just thinking about things in a different way. Is this true? Why do I believe this to be true? What evidence do I have for this to be true? Are there any logical fallacies that are involved in my thinking process? And there's a good chance that yes, there are. Regardless of how good you think you might be, there are logical fallacies everywhere. If you don't know what that term means, it just means flaws in your logic, in your thinking. And if you go to Wikipedia, you will be able to find a massive, absolutely massive list of logical fallacies. I personally couldn't be bothered reading all through them all. There are a handful that most people use all the time and we fall for all the time. They can be found in posters and things like that. So if you just Google the term logical fallacy, you will find like a helpful hints of like 10 or so logical fallacies that everybody falls for. And you may hear terms like the straw man argument, for example, or what's another one that keeps getting used? Argument from ignorance, the slippery slope fallacy. There's a whole heap of them. There's like pages upon pages upon pages of these things. And even with a small 2-sentence description, the list was just massive. But go look them up. They are very, very interesting. Now, on to me. I am an Australian. I was born in Adelaide, South Australia, and my parents, I don't know whether my father wasn't a believer in anything at all, really, I don't think, in terms of religion. My mother started out being a Roman Catholic with her family until she turned 13, and then the whole family had become Jehovah's Witnesses. And so when she was 13, she no longer had birthday presents, no longer had Christmas parties and things like that. It was all Jehovah's Witness stuff. And so that's part of my sort of upbringing. I was raised partially Jehovah's Witness. For those of you that don't know, Jehovah's Witness is partially, it's an offshoot of Christianity, but it stems around the belief that in 1914, someone had witnessed, I don't know, I guess possibly World War One, and they thought the world was coming to an end, and they'd witnessed something fall out of the sky apparently, and they believed that Satan had been kicked out of heaven, and so I think it was 100 years of tribulations and stuff like that, so that in 2014 Jesus was supposed to come back and God was supposed to come and whisk everybody away and to this new earth, destroy this earth, create a new earth, and everybody be sort of raptured. Not necessarily raptured, but all the good people that had died, the 144,000 mentioned in the Revelations, would come back, and everybody be living in a new earth garden paradise with new bodies and things like that. So that's the Jehovah's Witness sort of thing. And I grew up believing a lot of that. You have to understand, if you are conditioned from birth to believe that stuff, it's very difficult to challenge it. It's not necessarily a thing of intelligence. It's to do with how rational thinking. And a lot of religions, what they do is they will suppress logic and rational thinking so that you don't question and you don't doubt your religion. Another thing was that you can ask questions, but you couldn't do so on your own, if that makes sense. You couldn't read the Bible by yourself. Always read the Bible by yourself, maybe with a little bit of adult supervision, because some of that stuff in the Bible is not suitable for children. I guarantee you it is not suitable for children. There's a lot of stuff in there that's very pornographic. It's very graphic. It's very violent. It's not a good book. Okay. What else? So Jehovah's Witnesses. And then I hooked up with a group of born-again Christians, and they were like a sect. They were not necessarily they were the non-denominational Church of Christ. And a few friends had said, oh, they're a bit dangerous, they believe in this and that. And someone had said to me that they believed in nude baptisms. And I think, okay, well, I haven't really seen anything like that. Anyway, they wanted me to get baptized, and I'd never been baptized. And the reason I'd never been baptized is because when I was a baby, my mother's father pressured her into getting baptized and getting me baptized. And she resisted, and my grandfather died when I was young anyway, but he was really pushy in trying to convert her to Jehovah's Witness and stuff like that. It's fear-based, guilt tripping. If you don't get baptized, you'll suffer eternal torment and stuff like that, right? And that does a lot of people's heads in. There's a problem with that in the United States now. Very firebrand stuff, hellfire and all that sort of stuff. It does not have a sense of morality to it, if you understand that. Anyway, I'm rambling. What I had done is I got hooked up with this denominational Church of Christ, and at the same time I was listening to a lot of rap music. So I was getting a lot of like a black ghetto perspective, and not rap music, not Christian rap music, it was gangster rap music. So this hard underlying. So you become aware of police brutality and racism and the KKK and stuff like that. Anyway, this other church group was starting to spout a lot of hatred and stuff like that on the naked baptisms. They wanted me to be baptized, and I thought, yeah, okay, yeah. I'm thinking, well, I don't really have any bathers. And they said, well, what do you need bathers for? And I'd been from nude baptisms. What do you need bathers for? No. And then that sort of switched me off. But while I was a Christian with the non-denominational Church of Christ, I had read the Bible. I'd actually read through all 50 chapters of Genesis, and I think that's how many were. There was Genesis and a few other books of the Old Testament. Because with Jehovah's Witnesses, you're not allowed to read the Bible unless you have someone within the church translating the Bible for you, and so you get all their doctrines. With the Jehovah's Witnesses, you can only read the Bible, and you can only read the Watchtower magazine, whatever. You are not allowed to watch TV, you're not allowed to do this and that. They're starting to, and you're not allowed to use the internet either, because on the internet, you've got all the ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, you've got all the apostates and stuff like that. And you are supposed to disfellowship. And this is where it gets crazy. This is where the cognitive dissonance comes in. You have to disfellowship with Jehovah's Witnesses if you are gay. And my uncle, who was a Jehovah's Witness, was gay. He passed away in 2009. But that's another story. The disfellowship with the Jehovah's Witnesses, if you're either gay or you're an ex-JW, and this is cutting off. See, there's a thing of where the reason it works is suppressing logic once again, and two, you think these people are a negative, evil influence on you, right? So that you can be stuck within this cult. So Christianity, I was a Christian for a long time, and then I started hanging around with the church, mainly for charity. You get free food and stuff like that. That's something you got to be aware of with the churches. They will offer free food and things like that to rope people in. Free food, church. Then came the conspiracy theories, and I had absorbed all of them. I drew the line at the flat Earth stuff, and I also, the inverted hollow Earth theory. I drew the line at that. That was just wackadoodle. There's a few friends that were into the David Icke stuff and Alex Jones and all those sorts of stuff, right? Because they didn't have access to the internet, and my access into the internet was spotty at best. It was public libraries and things like that. So I wasn't getting access to the information that I needed. So I was absorbing all these conspiracy theories. 9/11 was an inside job, and all these sorts of things that are absolutely nonsense. And then they started talking about how the moon landing was fake, and you think, hang on, I know that it's not fake. The moon landing was real. So you start to question this stuff. There's seeds of doubt, like when I was a Jehovah's Witness, I used Christianity to undo a lot of the Jehovah's Witness stuff. So you're thinking, okay, well, I've read the Bible, I'm with a proper church, and each group, that was another thing too, I'd studied ninjutsu. And I'm not bragging or anything like that. It was through the Bujinkan school. under Masaki Hitsumi and stuff like that as well. The reason I'm mentioning that is because at the same time I was thinking, okay, Christianity's the best religion, ninjutsu was the best martial art, and I was also an Amway distributor. Yes, okay, so very gullible and not questioning anything. There's no sort of there's little bits of doubt, there's seeds of doubt, but there wasn't the shielding that proper skeptics have now. They shield themselves from a lot of nonsense. Excuse that. Yeah, they shield themselves from a lot of nonsense, right? So that's why skeptics can be seen as very hostile sometimes, and it's not that they're hostile, it's just they're rejecting an idea, and they're trying not to reject the people that have the ideas. It's just the ideas themselves, you know. And I think, but then again, your approach might be different. I don't know. Um, so all the conspiracy theories until I saw a friend of mine snap. He actually snapped in his mind, his brain. He believed the David Icke stuff that the Queen was a lizard, and I didn't really buy that, but it sounded good. But one of the things that got me was that I had a background with computers. I'd always been around computers, playing computer games and things like that. So in the conspiracy magazines like Nexus and New Dawn and all those sorts of things, they would have pictures of people half human, half reptilian, and what had happened was you could tell it was dodgy CGI, and I kept thinking, oh, that's fake, right? I was into ghosts and Loch Ness monster and all that sort of stuff too. UFOs, I wanted to believe. You know, in the X-Files, the poster, I want to believe. That's what that's about. You want to believe, so you have the illogical fallacy, which I mentioned earlier in the video, confirmation bias, and so forth. But here's the thing: throughout my life, there have been skeptics the whole way through, sort of saying, "Oh, look, that's not true. That's not true. That's not true." I actually met a guy who was a Freemason, and you have to understand, Freemasons are supposedly evil. No, it's just a sort of a cult thing. He was funny, this guy, because he was the most skeptical person that I knew. He'd been to university, had an arts degree and all sorts of stuff, but was a Freemason. I met him when I became a Buddhist. Now, I became a Buddhist because I'd absorbed all of this conspiracy stuff, but I went to see a psychiatrist because I had depression and things like that. The psychiatrist was an 80-year-old man who was very, very good. He was a good therapist and stuff like that, but he was using Buddhism and maybe a little bit of hypnosis to, yeah, I know, your alarm bells are probably going haywire, right? Meditation, he taught me meditation, made me wait a year. And then he said, you've got to practice every day and you've got to make sure your back's straight and all this sort of stuff. Right? Meditation, for those of you that don't know, is a tool of, I really wish it wasn't part of the mainstream now, because it's a tool of suppressing logic once again, right? Because you're calm and you're relaxed, and then you are susceptible to letting ideas in that aren't healthy. Things like rebirth and whatnot, right? So anyway, he was talking about Buddhism, but one of the things about Buddhism is they will scream and yell, Buddhism is not a religion, and they will hammer it in. Buddhism is not a religion. Buddhism is not a religion. Buddhism is not a religion. But it's a religion. It's a religion because, one, you believe in rebirth or reincarnation. You believe that the Buddha existed in the form of Siddhartha Gautama. But then there's other things. Apparently there are multiple Buddhas. Then you've got to worship the Dalai Lama, who's supposed to be a Buddha, but he says that he isn't, but his followers won't question that. Then you've got, let's see, but apparently if you follow it properly, the Dalai Lama is actually a reincarnation of Sariputra, who was one of the Buddha's offsiders, one of his students, right? So the idea that you could have superpowers and stuff like that, that's another thing with Buddhism. And one of the things I couldn't understand with atheism is they would attack all the religions, right? But I'm thinking, well, why are you attacking Buddhism? That's my religion. The ego comes in. See, your ego will protect the religious thinking. So it's like, Buddhism's not that bad. And even, Richard Dawkins, they'll talk about Buddhism, but they don't talk about it enough, right? Because it's still peace-based, but it's still selfish, because it's still, I get to be enlightened. I get to be fully enlightened, right? Because it's the ego, right? Feeding the ego, even though it's talking about suppressing the ego, which is the other thing is within Buddhism is that you are encouraged to stay away from free thinkers again, and I never really, and libertines, I've never understood that. And then you start to, once you become a free thinker, once you become a skeptic or an atheist or whatever, you start to think, okay, this is what's going on. And I started to reject all these ideas and things like that. But going back, I used to believe that I had psychic powers, okay, because my mother believed that she had an ESP and stuff like that. Once again, the psychic stuff is basically just it's ego mixed with confirmation bias. That's all psychic stuff is. You basically cherry pick all the positive hits that you get, and you reject any fails you get. And she's still wasting money on psychics and stuff like that, even though she's supposed to be psychic herself. It goes to a spiritual church and all this sort of stuff. But yeah, so I believed that I was psychic, had psychic abilities. And a girlfriend at the time said, look, no, he's just saying that to whatever. He's pulling the wool over your eyes, And I didn't listen to her at all, because once again, it's ego. I'm sure you watching this, you want to feel special, right? You want to feel wanted and special. That's why these people get deluded. That's why these people want to be the Messiah, or they snap a little bit. Okay, that's right, going back. My friend snapped because I refused to believe that the Queen was a lizard person. And you could see there's something just going off in his brain. And he just looked at me, and then he started to believe his own nonsense, right? He used to tell jokes about this. So, he goes to tell a joke again, and then you laugh at this joke, and he'll say, what are you laughing at? This happened, it's just real. And you think, no. He went nuts, right? So I went off the chemtrail conspiracy theories, because I was following them at the time when they went from, they called them contrails, and then they tried to distinguish between a contrail and a chemtrail. And of course, scientifically, there's no difference at all. The chemical in chemtrails is water. That's it. It's just water. It's water vapor. I've been ridiculed for coming out and being a skeptic and going against the grain, because I'm starting to use my brain, starting to use my logical, rational thinking. I lost my job because everybody around me was high on cocaine, but the management of the place that I used to work, refused to see it. it's a shame, really. But anyway, seeds of doubt the whole way through. The linchpin, and I should have got this to a lot earlier. I don't know how long this video is going for, but we'll see. The linchpin that really pulled the legs out from under any paranormal or religious belief was I wanted to listen to a podcast, and I had the idea that a Christian podcast would be safe, right? So I found a podcast called Dogma Debate, and it turned out to be an atheist arguing with Christians and other religious people, but not in a I'm right, you're wrong. Everybody had a chance to speak and things like that. So I think, okay, this is all right. So I go through the track listing, and there's a few tracks where they're talking about evolution. And I knew about evolution, but I was very rusty on it. And this is the other thing, and I can see somebody watching this. The other thing was that I had been exposed to Ken Ham and his creationist theories and things like that, and his revisionist ideas of science and things like that. So I had his idea of evolution, what it was evil and brought about Nazis and stuff like that. So when I listened to it, I thought, oh, hang on. I was listening to the podcast with Rachel Nannon Brown, and Rachel Nannon Brown is a paleoanthropologist, gorgeous woman, by the way, and she's in a relationship with an atheist here on YouTube. So I started listening, and she gets to this point where she says that there's no such thing as race because we're all the same species, right? Humans are all the same species. What had happened was we split out, and interbred as we moved across the planet. The reason we have white skin is because we moved to colder climates. We needed the vitamin D, so we lost the melanin, and so on and so forth. This is why ginger people, when they fly from, say, Ireland or whatever to Australia, they get sunburnt very, very quickly, right? It's because of the lack of melanin. They are not evolved for Australian climate or across the equator, and things like that. So I started listening to Rachel Nannon Brown, started listening to Aaron Ra, and I was watching a lot of YouTube too. The Amazing Atheist. When I first started listening to The Amazing Atheist, he came across as, once again, fairly evil. A lot of atheists will swear and carry on and smoke and do drugs, and when you're inside a religion, you're told that those things are sinful and those things are worldly, and so on and so forth. So that's something that I think that atheists may need to keep in mind. You shouldn't have to change your personal habits and drinking habits and stop smoking or whatever, right? But it's something to keep in mind. I think, Aaron Ra's got a big, massive beard and long hair. He looks less like Jesus and more like the opposition. So that's why I became a lot more skeptical. I think meeting more people who are skeptical has helped a lot. Started listening to atheist podcasts, trying to figure out where they were coming from, what they were doing, and things like that. If you are enjoying the video, please leave a comment. I can't read anybody's comments at the moment. I don't know how to set this up properly. This was a Google Hangout because A few people last time had complained about the audio quality. I've got my fridge running in the background. Please forgive me for that. And yeah, so that's my backstory. It jumps a bit, but that's the way I think because of the damage of the religious thinking. Things like Star Wars. Star Wars is a religious text. If you aren't aware of it, there's a character called Han Solo, and he plays the character, the skeptic, atheist sort of character who, in order for you to believe in the Force, right, which is nonsense, right? If it wasn't for his character, you wouldn't believe in the Force at all. You wouldn't understand what's going on, right? What his role is in the movie is to sow a seed of doubt, right? It's just simple tricks and nonsense. Ancient religions, hokey religions and ancient, weapons are no good. Aren't as good as having a blaster by your side, right? He's no nonsense. He flies by the seat of his pants, doesn't believe in it. He's explored here, there, and everywhere. Does not believe in the Force, right? So what he does is he's the skeptic. Now, traditionally, if you watch a lot of horror movies, it's the skeptic that dies first, but they have to have the skeptic. All right, they say, well, I don't believe in this, and I don't believe in demons, and I don't believe in this and that, right? So you have the skeptic, doesn't believe in anything. He dies, right? So, he's foolish, he's crazy, being a skeptic, being an atheist. He dies, right? Then you have the other character that says that want to survive. So what do? They turn to the religious icon. They, you've got the crucifixes and the holy water, and you'll see it in a lot of Nightmare on Elm Street movies. They have to consecrate ground or say prayers and do all sorts of stuff that will stop evil spirits and stuff like that coming in. And I think a lot of horror movies are actually propaganda, but it's actually religious propaganda if you stop and think, if you realize that, okay, they killed the skeptic first, and then what happens is they use your own doubt. And so, okay, look, here's the doubt. I acknowledge your doubt. We'll move it away, and then here comes the BS, right? Suspension of disbelief, and in comes the nonsense, right? And all the big movies do this all the time. A lot of websites, a lot of magazines do this. It's like saying, I'm not racist, but, right? So you acknowledge this may seem racist, right? What I'm about to say may seem racist, but I know it might seem racist to some people, but, and then they come out with the pure racism, pure hate, or I don't hate gay people, and then in comes, so you acknowledge, put it aside, and then in comes the BS, right? And that technique, once I become aware of that, a lot of articles will say this is not fat shaming, and then they proceed to fat shame. And then when you go to highlight to somebody, this is fat shaming, or this is racist, or this is homophobic, or whatever, they will defend the article because they've had their disbelief put to the side. That's why people get converted to religions and things like that. And I am reluctant to take a harder approach, largely because I believed a lot of this stuff. I believed a lot of the spiritual stuff. And so I've had to move myself away. I was a Buddhist for a long time too. That's right, my psychiatrist sort of had said it's not a religion, and we don't convert other people. Oh, okay, fine. So I'm curious. I'm thinking, well, what is this Buddhism? What is it about? And then I get taught meditation, and I actually ended up going to a few temples where they actually had worship. They were worshipping. Um, I can't remember the name of. There's a Vietnamese temple, but my doctor wasn't Vietnamese. This was like a different sect of Buddhism. That's another clue that it's a religion because there are sects of Buddhism. But they were worshipping statues, and you had to prostrate yourself 3 times a day. There were rituals and lots of meditation. But when you stop and you think, this is the only life that I have, this is the only life that I have, I'm wasting my time meditating. Okay? I used to go to a lot of free meditation. You go to a free meditation thing, you just sit there and you just focus on your breathing and things like that. And it's really calm and it's relaxing and things like that. Until you realize that, and it's free, until you realize they put a little thing saying, oh, now it's by donation. So they're charging money for something that you can do at home. But your only real benefit is you're doing it in a group, you meet with a group, and it becomes a social thing. But that money that is raised, right, and I caught them doing this because they had nuns, the people that can't touch money. You know, out of the corner of my eye, you don't tell anybody under the thing, here's $50, you know, that'll cover your petrol and all this sort of stuff. And you think, no. When you realize that this is the only life that you have, why would you piss fart about meditating? Why would you waste a second? You don't get a second chance. You will not be reborn. There is no afterlife. That's the biggest scam of all. People cannot fathom death, right? They hate it. They hate the idea of non-existence. The idea that if you shut your eyes and plug your ears and just go quiet for a little bit, right, and your brain will shut down a little bit, your thinking processes calm down a little bit, then what happens? What happens then? Minimal sensation, right? Just to get your that flowing in your head. Minimal sensation, but imagine that permanently. No sensation. It ends. Your whole life, your whole experience, everything that you experience is an electrical signal in your brain. It stops. There's no afterlife. A lot of people cannot deal with that. They cannot deal with the grief and pain of loss. Their loved ones die. It happens. We want to believe that they've gone on to somewhere better because they've done something good. We want to believe that Hitler and Pol Pot and all these other horrible people who exterminated millions upon millions of people, we want them to suffer. We want them to suffer for eternity. You know, this is why the death penalty is not a good idea. These people need to be locked away and isolated and think about what they're doing, what they've done, right? Death is too quick when you execute someone. Wow, this turned into a long rant. I just wanted to do a basically 5-minute video talking about where I came from, all of the religious stuff that I absorbed, all of the conspiracy stuff that I absorbed, and now you see, and because I've shifted, I no longer believe this stuff. I get in fights on YouTube, on Facebook and YouTube because people, they want to believe in chemtrails, they want to believe in pseudoscience and stuff like this, and I'm thinking, no, I embraced I'm going to embrace science and rational thinking and logic and things like that. And those are the things that will end up on this channel. The videos will not be as long as this one, I assure you. This was just a one-off thing to get me back into the swing of the things, get this channel back up and running, and things like that. So I don't think this video is going to do a whole lot of business, but I hope that if you've sat through the video this long that you've enjoyed it. Please click like, please subscribe to the channel for more. Please share this video. It's long. You have my permission to edit this down to your favorite parts. And yeah, please leave a comment and let me know what you think in the comment box down below. What do you think of the audio quality? What do you think of the video quality? This is a really, really good camera. Please excuse the fridge running in the background every now and then. It's not running now. Yeah, so onwards and upwards. Anyway, that's all from me today. Look after yourselves, and bye for now.